Today, hip-hop is probably the most significant form of protest music. Whether it's NWA with Fuck the Police, or Joey Badass, A Tribe Called Quest, or Donald Glover, rap music can shine a light onto important social issues and is never shy to criticize those in power. It's also had an interesting relationship with the law. When you think of rappers who have been arrested, you might think of Gucci Mane for assault, or Kodak Black for drug trafficking. You would not think of Valtonyc. This is a Spanish rapper who was given a 3.5-year prison sentence by the Spanish Supreme Court earlier this year. He didn't beat anyone up and he didn't do drugs. He was sentenced to jail for his lyrics. This video is about Valtonyc, and about what his case can tell us about the general political climate in Spain, in specific the erosion of freedoms. I'll also discuss whether the situation in Spain might be a sign that Europe and the rest of the world is becoming less free. Dude, are you done down there?
Yeah, I'm done. You can go ahead.
Now, personally, I don't think anyone should be sent to jail for rapping. But then again, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't even know what he's saying. You know what? I have an idea. I decided to go to the one place I thought I'd never, ever return to, in order to meet up with someone I thought I'd never see again.
Victor, who are you keeping?
I wanted to talk to Narcis, who is my former ethics teacher, to ask him about Valtonic's lyrics.
I mean, I've read some of the Voltonic lyrics. I mean, I think they're not nice, to be honest with me. Llegaremos a de cuello, cabrón, encontrarlo en el palacio de Borbón Kalashnikov. And now he's showing that he wants to get the place when the King of Spain lives with the Kalashnikov.
Okay.
Yeah, it says, for example, que tenga miedo como un guardia civil en Euskadi. Okay, Euskadi is the Basque country. So in the 70s, 80s, every civil war had to spend at least 1 year in service of there because there was a lot of killings. ETA used to kill. I was reading some stats. In 1975, they killed in total around 65 civil guards and policemen in 1 year.
Yeah.
Puta policía, puta monarquía. Fuck police, fuck. Maybe.
Right.
Let's see if ETA put a bomb and explode.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost. He looks like he's praising what they did, and me being a 52 years old man who has been living just through all these years just on TV. I mean, some ETA that some brutal killings.
So, Valtonic's lyrics are violent, they go against the political establishment, especially the monarchy, and they praise terror attacks from ETA. But he shouldn't go to jail, at least not according to my teacher.
Yeah. He has the right to say what he wants. I mean, this, with no doubt.
But not everyone agrees with my teacher, in particular the people who sent him to prison. Since I didn't have the chance to speak with the judges, I grabbed the next best thing, my Spanish friend, Pablo. I brought him to school to discuss this with Narcis. Now, Pablo didn't want his face to be shown, so just use your imagination. I had a hunch that he would disagree about Valtonyc.
The fact that someone is saying like terrorism is good and that people should like do terrorism and kill other people, like I'm really disgusted by that. So like if someone is saying that killing like policemen is good, like policemen or just anyone, like and you know that ETA was a good thing, I just like that person like should not be in society and should just be cast away, like because that person has literally nothing good to like give to society. Because if they're just promoting violence, like just no.
While Pablo and Narcis were talking, I jotted down the basis of their disagreement. Fundamentally, the disagreement between Narcis and Pablo would come down to security versus freedom. To Pablo, Valtonyc is a potential security threat, as he could incite someone to murder a policeman or the king. To prevent that from happening, we put him in prison by taking away his freedom. You can't have a society with both perfect security and perfect freedom. You have to strike some sort of a balance. Personally, I don't think it's worth it to live in a perfectly secure society if it means people can't express their opinions. So I would side with Narcis for this one. This is Valtonic's jail sentence. It didn't come out of nowhere. The proceedings against him started in 2012, over some songs that he put out for free on his YouTube channel. Now finally, this year he was sentenced for defamation against the king and glorification of terrorism. The problem is that these two charges just don't hold up in international law. Let me explain. Spain is a member of the Council of Europe, which said back in 2007, where's this thing, that member states should abolish prison sentences for defamation and remove from their defamation legislation any increased protection for public figures. So defamation against the king should not really be a crime at all, and should definitely not be punishable by jail time. How about glorification of terrorism? This is made illegal by Article 578 of the Spanish Criminal Code. Now, this law has been repeatedly criticized by the UN and human rights groups because of how vague it is. The UN has said that, quote, criminal responsibility for expression relating to terrorism should be limited to those who incite others to terrorism. Vague concepts such as glorifying, justifying, or encouraging terrorism should not be used. In other words, what should be criminalized is direct incitement to commit a particular terrorist act. There has to be a reasonable expectation that the crime will be carried out, and a clear causal relationship between the incitement and the act. Song lyrics, no matter how violent, just don't fall under that category. And yet Valtonyc is the 15th rapper to be convicted for glorification of terrorism. The first rapper was convicted in 2015, and every single one of them was convicted for glorifying ETA, which by the way disbanded in 2011. Even though ETA disbanded in 2011, Amnesty International has reported a sharp rise in convictions under Article 578 in recent years, and it's not just rappers. Recently, this comedian was prosecuted for a sketch comparing Spain's ruling party, the Popular Party, to ETA. Regular, everyday, normal people in Spain have gotten jail sentences over something they've written on Twitter, like Alba Gonzalez for this tweet.
Can you
Prometo
translate
tatuarme
that?
la cara de quien le pegue un tiro a la nuca. You understand what it says?
She will tattoo herself with the face of whoever shoots Rajoy or De Guindos in the back of the neck. So Rajoy is the former Prime Minister of Spain. De Guindos is his finance minister. So for this tweet, she got a year suspended sentence, was not able to work in the public sector for 7 years, and lost her university scholarship. The argument goes that somebody might be encouraged by this tweet to actually go and kill these guys. But realistically, this isn't very likely to happen, just like these lyrics aren't very likely to incite someone to actually go and kill the king. Looking at Valtonyc and the other rappers, and all the comedians, journalists, and musicians that have been convicted over something they've said or rapped, I find it very suspicious that every single one of them has been from the political left. I'll remind you that there are still plenty of right-wing or fascist groups in Spain who have been known to advocate for violence, but they've largely been left alone by the Spanish judicial system.
It's just there's a situation in Catalonia now. Mm-hmm. There's a quite volatile situation because the pro-independent movement quite strong. 2 million people in favor of independence, mm-hmm. and from time to time there's attacks from the far right mm-hmm. to some people pro-independent. Yeah, nothing happens.
Yeah. So the Spanish judiciary is using this vaguely worded law prohibiting incitement to violence and applying it to just one political group. In other words, they're incredibly biased. So why does Spain's judiciary seem to be so biased? A lack of justice is often perceived as a serious problem in Spain.
One of the most important problems in Spain mm-hmm. now at the moment is justice. It is not working well.
In Spain, the judiciary is overseen by a body called the General Council of the Judiciary, which is responsible for picking all the other judges in the court system. Now, a bright 8-year-old can see why it's important for this particular body to be politically neutral. An impartial court is crucial for the fair application of the law, which is essential for a free and liberal society. On the other hand, a biased court can be used as a tool to achieve political objectives. Till 2013, every member of this body needed 3/5 of the vote from parliament to be elected, and this ensured that they were supported by multiple political parties, so they had to be neutral. But in 2013, when the PP, led by Mariano Rajoy, had a majority of seats in parliament, they changed this provision from 60% to 50%, which effectively gives the majority party in parliament complete control over who to elect to the council. Since then, the Popular Party have placed right-wing judges in key positions in the judicial system. Even the president of the Supreme Court, Carlos Lesmes, is a known hardline conservative.
Wait a couple of years and this is what happens.
Looking back at this graph, it seems quite obvious that these court decisions were politically motivated. The judiciary effectively lost its independence. In fact, Spain currently ranks between Brazil and Botswana in judicial independence, according to the World Economic Forum. So, the Catalan referendum was 8 months ago now. What happened to the leaders of the independence referendum?
Some of them went to Brussels, like President Puigdemont, and 4 of the councillors came to Brussels, and another of them stayed in Spain. So they were called by the High Tribunal. They went to Madrid, and they would say, so you are accused of rebellion, sedition, and going against the state, so you go straight to prison. No trial, and they are in the so-called prevention prison. So they can stay there for 1 year, 2 years, until the trial is set up.
Regardless of where you stand on Catalan independence, it is pretty clear that the courts were used as a simple political tool to imprison the leaders of the independence movement, rather than as a fair and balanced arbiter trying their best to resolve the situation.
There are a lot of benefits to having the courts on your side. You can stifle investigations into your own party's corruption, or you can send political opponents to jail for treason. Rajoy has done both. And when the population speaks out against the government, you can use the court to silence dissent. Now, I hope this gives some context as to why the Spanish Supreme Court thought it was reasonable to jail someone for 3.5 years for rapping.
Voltonic was sentenced for political reasons by a court which is politically biased, influenced by the Popular Party. Because of his left-wing ideology and seditious comments about the monarchy, he embodies the ideological enemy of the Popular Party, which is quite conservative and pro-monarchy.
Now, if this is possible in a modern liberal democracy, what does that say about the state of liberal democracy?
Is Spain the only country that's becoming less free, or is this a general pattern in the world? In a 1997 article called The Rise of Illiberal Democracy, Fareed Zakaria observed that, quote, democratically elected regimes are routinely ignoring constitutional limits on their power and depriving their citizens of basic rights and freedoms. He was talking about new democracies in Africa, the Middle East, the old Soviet bloc, and South America. Zakaria's idea was that just because people can vote for a government, that doesn't guarantee that this government will respect people's rights. In other words, democracy does not guarantee liberty or freedom. Instead, individual freedoms are safeguarded by a liberal culture, often embodied in a constitution, but more importantly, it's a common understanding that the individual's autonomy, dignity, and freedom must be protected. To put it simply, people in new democracies tended to vote for authoritarian leaders because they lacked a liberal culture. So Zakaria coins the term illiberal democracy to describe a democratically elected government that doesn't respect the rights of its citizens. And he was worried that they were becoming more and more common around the world.
And he was right. A lot of the examples he gave in 1997 have gotten a lot worse.
Take Russia and Turkey, for instance.
Putin and Erdogan have both subverted the legal apparatus of their democratic countries to suppress dissent by limiting freedom of speech and assembly and jailing political opponents. And yet, both presidents were democratically elected and remain very popular to this day.
Egypt is another good example. In recent years, the president El-Sisi has kidnapped and tortured his political opponents, killed hundreds of protesters, and cracked down on the freedom of the press. But his approval ratings are amazing. Of course, there is some resistance, but it seems that the majority of people in Egypt do not care about their rights and freedoms. Perhaps they prefer security. Sound familiar? Just for fun, here's a woman on Egyptian TV telling us what she thinks about these pesky things called human rights.
Whew. Human rights are raping our children. It's this kind of attitude that's allowing El-Sisi to get away with murder.
The majority of the people do not care about human rights. And this applies to all illiberal democracies. And there is evidence to suggest that the illiberal democracy might have finally reached Europe. A disturbing poll shows that a growing number of people in France, the United Kingdom, and Germany now favor a strong leader who does not have to bother with parliament or elections. Hungary, Serbia, and Poland have made this wish a reality. The Hungarian Prime Minister, Victor Orban, proudly declares that he seeks to end liberal democracy and replace it with an illiberal state, citing Russia and Turkey as examples to be followed. The developments in Spain are a part of this worrying trend. Spain has now made it illegal to protest in front of parliament and introduced heavy fines for protesters, giving further license to the police to respond with violence. Conveniently, taking unauthorized images of the police, like the ones you're seeing now, is also a criminal offense.
Evaristo Paramo. He was a singer of a radical punk group back to the 70s, back to the 80s.
Yeah.
He's been singing the same kind of songs against fascism, against politics, against the monarchy, and now just 2 weeks ago he was questioned by the police about the lyrics.
Yeah.
But he has been doing this since 1970 something.
That's interesting. So what can we do? Our liberties and freedoms are under attack, but our democracy is doing just fine. You know, we still all have a say in how our country is governed. So in order to protect our rights, we have to make people care about our rights. In other words, we have to encourage a liberal culture, which is why I'm making this video. George Bernard Shaw famously said that democracy ensures that we shall be governed no better than we deserve. If we don't care about our rights, we don't deserve them. That's the hard truth. The reason why I chose to talk about Voltonic is not because he's the most famous Spanish rapper to go to prison, because he's not. In fact, he's kind of obscure with just 17,000 subscribers. Well, only. But unlike a lot of the rappers who got scared by their jail sentences and stopped making music, Voltonic actually got encouraged. He made more music. In fact, the day after his conviction, he released an entire album. His jail sentence garnered a lot of media attention and opened up a debate in Spain on freedom of speech, on justice, corruption, and the royal family. All the things we've discussed today. Voltonic was meant to go to jail on the 24th of May. On the 23rd, he tweeted, "Tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow they're gonna knock down the door of my house to put me in jail. For some songs. Tomorrow, Spain is going to make a fool of itself once again. I won't make it so easy. Disobeying this fascist state is an obligation." He packed his bags and fled the country. Regardless of what you think of his lyrics, the spread of illiberal democracy around the world shows us that we desperately need people like Voltonic in today's Europe. People who stand up against authority by daring to exercise their rights.
Estic visquent com una lluita, com un dret fonamental que és de tothom, i reincidint en els delictes i propagant-ho i animant a la gent que difongui la nostra música i les nostres coses com per tal de veure de que no tenim por, de que a part de respecte al règim també li han perdut la por.
I stand fully behind Voltonic. Voltonic, I may disagree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it.
Yo no soy otro peligro que coger un micro, soltar la verdad al filo de la clandestinidad contra el poder establecido. Soy el grito de guerra que quizás traiga paz. Por el pan pienso explotar a quienes nos han jodido. Mis clanos son vendidos, no andan en platos de televisión jugando a discutir con el fascismo, adoptando el discurso del enemigo, silenciando al pueblo cuando a las puertas del burgués lleva los tiros. Están perdidos, va a dar mejor mi ejemplo, con comandos como los